Welcome to the Soapbox Daily Podcast, episode 190. Hey, I'm your host, Matt Morgan, and thank you very much for tuning in today. Here we explore the ins and outs of our daily lives, and today we have an interesting topic for you, which I'm pretty sure you can all relate. Today we're tackling a question that many of us have probably asked at some point. Why is the news always bad news? It seems like every day we're bombarded with stories of tragedy, disaster, and injustice, but is it just a coincidence, or is there something deeper at play? In this episode, we'll explore the reasons why the news tends to be focused on the negative and what this means for our perception of the world around us. Before we get into that, hey, how's your integrity been this week? How's your integrity today? Are you doing the right thing when no one else is watching? Only you will know, onwards and upwards. Do the right thing, make the positive change. Domino effect, folks. We're going to change this world. We can do it. We all work in it together. So let's get into today's topic and talk a little further on this one. Let's start off with the evolution of news. Just get a good point moving into this particular topic. To understand why news is often negative, we need to look at the history of journalism. Early news outlets were primarily focused on providing information about politics, business, and events that affect the community. But over time, competition among news organizations led to an emphasis on sensational stories and scandalous headlines. It seems people were drawn in by these things because it seemed out of the ordinary, while everybody else was pretty much saying the same thing. They had to take to the next level, it seems. With that being said, it gets into a whole philosophical thing. So the role of psychology when it comes to negativity in news, because there's also a psychological aspect to our attraction to negative news. Research has shown that we are more likely to remember negative events than positive ones. It's a phenomenon known as the negativity bias. This means that news outlets are more likely, they're more likely to report on negative events because they are more likely to capture the attention and keep us engaged. Sadly as that is. But overall, what's the impact? Well, the impact on society, that can have a positive and a negative, which is something that we should be concerned about. While negative news may be more attention grabbing, it can also have a negative impact on our perception of the world around us. Constant exposure to negative news can lead to feelings of fear, anxiety, and hopelessness. It can also lead to a distorted view of the world, where we believe that the world is a more dangerous and violent place than it actually is. I'll give you an example. For instance, the whole Ukraine war. The way that the news was presenting this was completely black and darkened, and although it was a very miserable situation, it wasn't as escalating as much as the news presented it. The reason I know that, because my wife is Polish, and she has relatives there that were given the ground level, firsthand experiences, and giving that kind of feedback as to what was actually going on that the media wasn't presenting. So with that being said, what's the future of the news? I mean, as we move into an era of digital news, the way we consume news is changing rapidly. With the rise of social media, news organizations are increasingly competing for our attention in a crowded marketplace. If it's not the actual media places that are doing the news, it's your average Joe. Some outlets are even experimenting with positive news stories to counteract the negative news cycle, while others are focusing on more in-depth reporting to provide a more nuanced view of the world. In conclusion, with this, you gotta ask, so why is the news always bad news? While there are many factors at play, it ultimately comes down to the fact that negative news is more attention grabbing. But as we move forward, it is important to recognize the impact that constant exposure to negative news can have on our perception of the world. By seeking out positive news stories and engaging with a more diverse range of perspectives, we can work towards a more balanced view of the world around us. Honestly, I think negative news is kind of like an internal thing where people are concerned about their own safety and well-being, and they want to know that any threats that are coming towards them, and that's why they want to know about negative news. That's just my viewpoint. I'd like to hear what your viewpoint is. You can reach out to me over on Twitter at @MattSoapbox, or also on our website at themadmorgan.com. Yes, themadmorgan.com for more information on all our podcasts and projects and shows from now and moving into the future. I want to thank you very much for listening today. Please keep your integrity in check, and I will see you next time for our next episode.